Okay, so you're here with us because you really want to understand what's important, right? And you don't want to wade through all the noise and clutter online.
Let me get right to it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what this is all about, this deep dive. Today, it's all about autonomous vehicles.
AVs.
AVs, right? Self-driving cars. Are we really on the edge of a driverless world?
It's wild to think about, right? Like, it's science fiction, but it seems closer than ever.
It really does feel like something out of the future, but it's happening now.
Yeah. And there's a lot of information out there, so we went through it all and distilled it down for you. We're going to break down what's real, what's hype, and what you really need to know.
That's our mission here, to cut through all the noise and give you a clear picture of this rapidly evolving landscape.
Yeah, so we can all kind of get our heads around what this future might actually look like. Because think about it, fewer accidents,
Smoother commutes, yeah?
maybe even totally different cities.
Potentially right. It's a pretty compelling vision. It is. So, okay, let's start with the basics. What exactly are we talking about when we say autonomous vehicles?
Okay, so autonomous vehicles, they're essentially self-driving cars,
Yeah.
right? And it's really interesting because it's where AI and transportation engineering come together.
So more than just cruise control.
Way more, yeah. We're talking systems loaded up with sensors, cameras, radar, LiDAR, all constantly gathering information about everything around the car.
Okay, so the car is seeing everything.
Seeing, sensing, yeah. And all that data feeds into these complex algorithms. And that's the brain of the vehicle, right? The algorithms make decisions in real time and control the car
Without the driver having to constantly do stuff?
without continuous human intervention.
Yeah.
Pretty wild. And the potential benefits are huge.
Yeah. What are some of the big ones?
Okay, so first off, safety. Human error is a huge factor in accidents, right?
It is, yeah.
So AVs have the potential to drastically reduce accidents.
I see.
And then think about mobility for people who have trouble getting around.
Older folks, maybe people with disabilities.
Exactly. AVs could really open up the world for them.
That's amazing.
It is, yeah.
Mm.
And then there's the ripple effect on whole industries,
Mm.
logistics, ride-hailing. We could see massive efficiency improvements and completely new business models.
I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah, it's pretty transformative stuff when you think about it.
So who's actually making all this happen? Who are the companies at the forefront of all this?
There are a few big players out there.
Yeah.
On the tech side, you've got Waymo, which is a subsidiary of Google. They've been leading the charge.
They're the ones doing all the real-world testing, right?
Tons of it. Their vehicles have logged over 20 million miles on public roads. Think about that.
That's insane. 20 million miles.
Crazy, right? And it's interesting, a lot of their data shows how hard it is to predict pedestrian behavior, especially in cities. Like how people move in unpredictable ways.
Yeah.
It's something human drivers kind of just deal with. But for AI, it's a big challenge.
That's fascinating. So how do they address that?
Well, they're constantly refining their algorithms based on all that real-world data. They're basically teaching the AI to understand human behavior better.
That makes sense. So who else is in the game?
Okay, so then there's Tesla. They're taking a slightly different approach with their autopilot and full self-driving features. They rely more on cameras and vision systems. But their end goal is still full autonomy.
Okay, so they're going for the same thing, but different methods.
Yeah, different paths to the same destination. And then it's not just tech companies. Traditional car manufacturers like Ford and General Motors are also pouring resources into this.
Well, they're not just sitting back and watching.
Definitely not. They know this is the future and they want to be a part of it.
Makes sense. Now, I remember reading something about a self-driving taxi service. What was that about?
You're talking about Waymo again. They launched the first fully autonomous taxi service back in 2020 in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, wow, I remember that.
It was a huge moment because it wasn't just testing anymore. It showed that this technology could actually be a viable business.
So people could just order a ride on their phone and a driverless car would show up.
Exactly. No driver. It was a real-world demonstration of how the tech was moving beyond theory and into practice.
That's pretty mind-blowing. So who do you think is most likely to be drawn to this tech?
You know who I think would be really into this? Our learner persona. Someone in their 20s or 30s. Tech-savvy, curious about the latest gadgets.
Yeah, they'd be all over this.
Absolutely. It's cutting-edge innovation, right?
Totally.
Plus, think about the convenience. More productive commutes.
Mm.
And let's be honest, there's a coolness factor.
Oh, definitely, like riding in a spaceship or something.
Totally. It speaks to that desire for efficiency and technological advancement.
For sure. Okay, but as cool as all this is, there must be some challenges too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, first and foremost, safety's got to be the top priority.
Yeah.
These
Obviously.
systems have to be safe in all kinds of situations. Normal driving conditions, sure, but also weird, unexpected stuff.
So like crazy weather or a kid running out into the street.
Exactly. And then there's the whole regulatory landscape, which is a bit of a mess right now. Different regions have different rules, and it's constantly changing.
So like one state might allow testing, but another might not.
Yeah, it's a patchwork.
Yeah,
And it makes it really tough for companies trying to operate across the country.
that's a big hurdle.
It is. And then there's the question of jobs. What happens to all the professional drivers if self-driving cars become the norm?
Truckers, taxi drivers, Uber drivers, it's a huge workforce.
Yeah, there are a lot of people whose livelihoods could be affected. So that's something we need to think about carefully.
Yeah, those are all really big concerns. What about the tech itself? Are there limitations right now with what the cars can actually do?
That's a great question. One of the keys to how these cars work is something called sensor fusion.
What's that?
It's basically combining data from all the different sensors to get a better picture of the environment.
So like the cameras, radar, lidar, all working together.
Exactly. Each sensor type has strengths and weaknesses. Cameras are great for recognizing objects, but struggle in low light. Radar is good for speed and distance, but not so good at detail. LiDAR is amazing for 3D mapping, but gets thrown off by bad weather.
I see.
So the AI needs to take all this information from all these different sources and fuse it together.
That's a lot of data to process.
It is. And while the systems are getting pretty good at it, they still have limitations, especially in adverse weather conditions like heavy snow or fog. And they still have trouble interpreting unpredictable human behavior.
So even though the tech is advanced, it's not perfect.
Not yet. It's still evolving.
So for someone who wants to go deeper than just the headlines, what should they be focusing on? Our source mentioned something called expert instructions. What were those about?
Those expert instructions are basically a roadmap for understanding this field. The first thing is to stay informed. The technology is moving so fast, the regulations are changing constantly. You got to keep up.
Stay on top of it all.
Yeah. And then try to understand the core technologies. Stuff like machine learning, computer vision, sensor
The
fusion.
building blocks of the whole thing.
Exactly. Once you get a grasp of those concepts, you can start to evaluate the capabilities and limitations of AVs.
Makes sense. What else?
Keep an eye on the legal and regulatory developments, because those will determine where and when these vehicles are allowed to operate.
So like, will self-driving cars be legal in my state?
Exactly. And when will that happen? And then finally, think about the bigger picture. How will AVs impact society? How will they change our cities? How will they affect personal mobility?
So it's not just about the cars themselves, but the whole ecosystem around them.
It's about understanding the ripple effects.
I like that. Ripple effects. So our source also mentioned some outside-the-box tips for getting more involved. What were those?
Okay, so those tips were about taking your learning to the next level, like getting hands-on experience.
So more than just reading articles.
Right. So one idea is to participate in hackathons focused on autonomous vehicle tech. It's
Yeah.
a chance to get some real-world experience, collaborate with other people in the field.
Cool.
Yeah. And if there are any pilot programs in your area where you can actually ride in a self-driving car, try to get involved.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, it's a great way to see how the technology works in real-world situations and get a feel for the user experience.
That's awesome. So our source also told a funny anecdote about a self-driving car getting pulled over by the police. What was that all about?
That story is a perfect illustration of the challenges of integrating this new tech into our existing systems. It happened back in 2015 in Mountain View, California. This self-driving car gets pulled over by a cop.
For speeding?
Nope, for driving too slow.
Really?
Yeah, it was going way below the speed limit.
Yeah.
And it highlights a key issue with AV development. They're programmed to be super cautious, which is great for safety, but it can sometimes create problems when they're interacting with human drivers.
So the car was being too careful.
Exactly. And it is funny, but it shows that these systems need to learn not just how to drive, but how to drive in a way that makes sense in the context of human traffic.
So like fitting in with the flow.
Yeah. It's about being predictable and understandable to other drivers on the road.
That's really interesting. So as we wrap this up, what's the big takeaway you want our listeners to remember about autonomous vehicles?
I think the main thing is this. Autonomous vehicles have the potential to completely change transportation and even society as a whole. But how that plays out depends on a lot of things. Technological progress, government regulations, societal acceptance. It's a complex issue. And staying informed and engaged is crucial.
It's not just about the tech itself.
It's about the bigger picture. the implications and the choices we make as a society.
Totally. It's exciting and a little scary at the same time. So as you go about your day, think about this. We've talked about self-driving cars, but the tech behind them, AI, sensors, algorithms, it's showing up everywhere.
It's permeating everything.
Right. So how will the rise of all these autonomous systems, not just vehicles, affect your life, your choices? It's something to ponder.
It is. It's a future we're all creating together.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another topic.
Until next time.
See ya.